Imagine waking up one morning and checking your phone. You scroll through your contacts, and you realize someone is simply gone. No fight, no goodbye, no explanation. They were just there yesterday, and now they aren't. Their number deleted, their messages cleared, like they were never part of your life at all. Or maybe you are that person. Maybe you are the one who did the deleting, and the silence that followed felt like the first full breath you had taken in years. We call this cutting people off, and when it happens, the world is usually quick to judge. They say the person is cold, selfish, immature, unable to handle real relationships. But what if that judgment is completely wrong? What if the person who disappeared isn't cruel at all, but simply in a kind of pain that most people never learn to see? Today, we are going to go inside that experience. We are going to look at 5 real psychological reasons why people reach this point. Not to excuse it, not to celebrate it, but to understand it. Because sometimes, the most extreme behavior comes from the deepest wounds. Stay with me. Think about what happens when you burn your hand badly. The kind of burn where even the air touching your skin is agony. In those first few days, you don't want anyone near it. Not because you don't trust them, not because you're angry at them, but because any contact, even gentle, well-meaning contact, just makes the pain worse. Some people carry a burn like that on the inside. It isn't visible. Nobody can see it. But every conversation feels like pressure on that wound. Every casual question, "How are you doing?" feels unbearable. Every social obligation feels like someone is trying to grab the burned hand and shake it warmly. So they pull away, not forever. They tell themselves, just until it stops hurting so much. But then weeks become months, and months become a way of life. There is something that psychologists have identified called rejection sensitivity. It is a pattern where a person feels the fear of being rejected so deeply, so physically, that it overrides almost everything else. These are not dramatic people. They are not being paranoid for fun. They genuinely feel, in their body, that any closeness could result in being left behind. And the feeling is unbearable. So they develop a quiet rule inside themselves. Leave first, before they leave you. If you cut the connection before it has a chance to hurt you, then technically you are safe. You are in control. Nobody abandoned you, because you were the one who walked away. It sounds logical from the inside. And in a painful way, it works. For a while, this pattern almost always starts young. It starts in the moments when a child reaches out and nobody is there, or when someone is there, but only sometimes. The love comes and goes unpredictably. The child doesn't know which version of their parent or caregiver they will get today. And so they learn early that closeness is dangerous. That love is something that disappears without warning. That it is smarter to need nothing than to risk needing something and having it taken away. That child grows up, but the lesson stays. You may have felt this yourself, not in every relationship, but in the moments when something was going well and a quiet voice inside said, "Don't trust it. Don't get comfortable. It won't last." That voice is old. It was trying to protect you once. The problem is, it never learned when to stop. Have you ever gone through something that changed you completely? Not gradually. The way people normally change, but suddenly, like a door slamming shut. Like waking up in the middle of your own life and realizing you are not who you thought you were. Maybe it was a period of deep sadness, or a moment of clarity you didn't expect, or losing someone, or finally seeing something about yourself you had been avoiding for years. After something like that, you look at the people around you and something feels off. They know the old version of you. They have expectations of who you are based on that version. And when you're around them, you find yourself falling back into old patterns, old jokes, old reactions, old ways of seeing yourself. It's like trying to change, but the people around you keep handing you the costume of who you used to be. And being polite, you put it back on every time. Some people reach a point where they feel they cannot become who they are trying to become, while also maintaining the relationships that defined who they were. So they make a choice that looks brutal from the outside. They let go of everyone from the old chapter, not out of hatred, but out of a desperate need to protect something fragile and new inside themselves. Think of a snake shedding its skin. In that moment, the snake is completely vulnerable. The new skin is soft, unprotected. Any pressure on it is painful. The snake needs stillness. It needs space. It cannot afford contact until the new skin has hardened. Some people are in exactly that place. Their new self is still forming, and they are terrified, truly terrified, that too much contact with the familiar will dissolve them back into the old shape before the new one has a chance to set. The tragedy is that they often cannot explain this to anyone. How do you tell a friend you have known for 10 years that being around them makes you feel like you are disappearing? How do you say that without it sounding like an insult? So instead of explaining, they simply go quiet. They fade, they stop responding. And the people they leave behind are left holding a silence they don't understand. This kind of disappearance isn't always permanent, but it can become permanent if the person never learns how to carry their new self into their old relationships. If they never discover that change doesn't have to mean destruction, there is a kind of tiredness that sleep doesn't fix. You wake up in the morning as already exhausted, not from what you did yesterday, but from the effort of just being a person in the world, of having to respond to messages, of having to remember what mood someone else is in, of having to manage how you come across, of having to perform being okay when you are not okay. For some people, social connection doesn't feel warm and nourishing. It feels like work, heavy, continuous, draining work, and they are already running on empty. This is one of the quietest and most misunderstood reasons people cut others off. Not because they are angry, not because they are protecting a new self, but simply because they have nothing left to give, and they are too exhausted to explain that to anyone. Depression does something specific to the way a person relates to other people. It makes everything feel impossibly heavy. A text message arrives, and the thought of responding feels like climbing a mountain. A phone call rings, and the sound of it feels like pressure, not connection. The person knows they should answer. They know the other person means well. But every ounce of energy they have is going towards simply getting through the day. And so they go silent. One day, then two. Then the silence grows so long that breaking it starts to feel impossible. Because now there's guilt on top of the exhaustion. Now they would have to explain not just how they feel, but why they disappeared. And that conversation feels like too much. So they say nothing, and the distance grows. You might have experienced something like this. A season where even the people you loved most felt like too much. Where you craved not loneliness exactly, but stillness. A break from the endless requirement to show up, to be present, to be responsive, to be enough. There is nothing shameful in that feeling. But it becomes dangerous when stillness turns into permanent withdrawal. When the temporary shelter becomes a permanent home, there is also something else at work for some people. A deep and quiet fear of being seen and found lacking. They stay away, not because they hate the people around them, but because they are terrified of being truly known. They imagine that if someone saw them fully, without the performance, without the carefully managed version of themselves, that person would turn away. And that fear of rejection is so strong that they would rather not risk the connection at all. Better to be alone by choice than rejected after trying. That is the logic. Quiet, invisible, and completely self-defeating. Not everyone who cuts people off is doing it from a place of pain or crisis. Some of them are doing it from a place of hard-won clarity. Think about the person who spent years saying yes to everything. Yes to the friend who only called when they needed something. Yes to the family member who criticized them at every dinner. Yes to the partner who made them feel small, then apologized, then did it again. Yes, yes, yes. Until one day, something shifted. They stopped saying yes, they started saying no, and the people around them didn't like it. Because here is the difficult truth about setting boundaries with people who have never respected yours. When you suddenly start respecting yourself, it looks like a problem to them. You changing feels like you attacking them, and the pressure to go back to the old arrangement can be enormous. Some people, exhausted by that pressure and unwilling to go back to who they used to be, make a clean cut. They remove the relationship entirely, and in many cases, that is the right thing to do. There are people in this world who will take everything you give and leave you empty. Recognizing that and choosing yourself is not selfish. It is survival. But here is where something complicated happens. The same instinct that helped you leave one harmful relationship can start applying itself to every relationship. The defense system that once protected you from real danger starts firing at things that aren't dangerous at all. A friend is late to meet you and something inside says, "See? They don't respect my time." An old colleague doesn't reply quickly enough, and the thought arrives. They never really cared. The pattern that once kept you safe starts keeping you alone. This is one of the saddest versions of cutting people off. Because it happens to people who did the right thing once. They recognized toxicity and they walked away from it. But then the mechanism stayed on. And now everyone is a potential threat. Now every relationship requires an impossible level of perfection to survive. The first sign of failure in the connection is severed, clean, final, non-negotiable. It can look like strength from the outside. It can feel like strength from the inside. But over time, it hollows a person out because human beings are not built to live without connection. We can tell ourselves we are fine alone, but the truth is quieter and more insistent than that. This one is harder to say and harder to hear, but it matters. Some people cut everyone off not because they are in crisis, not because they are changing, not because they are protecting themselves from real harm, but because the story of being hurt has become the most important thing about them. At some point, the pain became the identity. You know what this looks like? Maybe the person who always has a reason why every relationship ended badly. And in their version of the story, they are always the one who was wronged. Everyone else let them down. Everyone else was the problem. And they were simply too good, too sensitive, too real for the shallow people around them. There is almost always real pain underneath that story. The grievances are not invented. The hurt was genuine. But somewhere along the way, the hurt stopped being something that happened to them and started being who they are. And now they need it, because without the story of being wronged, they don't know what their life is about. Social media has made this worse in ways that are difficult to talk about. There is an entire corner of the internet dedicated to telling people that the highest form of emotional health is eliminating anyone who doesn't serve your peace. And that sounds wise. It sounds empowering. But it can also give a very appealing language to something that isn't actually healthy at all. It can make isolation sound like awakening. It can make cutting people off sound like growth, when really, it is avoidance dressed in the language of self-respect. The real marker of emotional health is not how quickly you can remove people. It is your ability to stay in a difficult conversation without losing yourself. It is your ability to say, "This hurt me, and I need to tell you that, and I want to see if we can find a way through it." That is far harder than disappearing, and far more powerful. But some people never learned that skill. They grew up in homes where conflict had only two modes, explosion or silence. Nobody ever showed them the quiet middle ground of honest, gentle, uncomfortable conversation. So they grew into adults with only two options available to them: endure it completely, or cut it off completely. And they keep choosing the cut, because they never learned there was a third way. In the short term, cutting people off can feel like relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. The noise stops. The obligation stops. The endless management of other people's feelings stops. And for someone who has been drowning in all of that, the silence can feel like finally being able to breathe. That part is real, and it should not be dismissed. But there is another part. The part that arrives later, slowly, usually in the evening, or in the quiet of a Sunday morning when there is nothing to distract you. It is the feeling of floating, of having no anchor, of looking at your phone and realizing there is nobody you would call if something went wrong. Nobody who knows where you are. Nobody who would notice if you disappeared. And the freedom you fought so hard for starts to feel in those quiet moments. Very much like emptiness. Chronic loneliness is one of the most damaging things a human being can experience. Not just emotionally, but physically. Our bodies were not built to live in permanent isolation. We need contact, not constant contact, not suffocating contact, but real, genuine, imperfect human contact. We need to be known by someone, and the people who cut everyone off often find themselves, years later, mourning connections they could have repaired, wondering if they were too quick, wondering what might have happened if they had stayed, wondering if the silence was worth it. If you see yourself anywhere in what we've talked about today, this next part is for you. The path back to connection doesn't start with a grand gesture. It doesn't start with calling everyone you've hurt and delivering an emotional speech. It starts with something much smaller. It starts with the questions you ask yourself. Most people who have cut others off spend a lot of time asking the same question over and over. Why did they do this to me? Why did they let me down? Why wasn't I enough? These questions feel meaningful, but they lead nowhere good. They are circles, and the longer you walk them, the deeper the groove becomes. Try replacing those questions with different ones. What did I learn about what I actually need? If I were to reach back out to someone, what would have to be different? In me, not in them. What do I know about myself now that I didn't know when that relationship ended? These questions hurt differently. They point inward instead of outward, and that is uncomfortable. But they also lead somewhere new and real. Try writing down 3 things you have come to understand about your own boundaries through the process of losing the people you lost. Not to blame yourself, not to excuse them, just to learn something about who you are and what you need. That is the first step. Small, private, just between you and a piece of paper. The second step is even smaller. When someone has been isolated for a long time, the thought of reconnecting with people feels enormous, like jumping into deep water. So don't jump. Just get your feet wet. Think of it as opening the door just a tiny bit, maybe 5%. A small action that puts you near another human being without requiring anything deep or difficult. Saying good morning to the person at the coffee shop and actually meaning it. Leaving a kind comment under something a former colleague posted online. Attending one class or one group session, not to make friends, but just to be near people without the pressure of performing closeness. Your nervous system needs to relearn something. It needs small, repeated evidence that connection is not always dangerous, that not every open door leads to pain. These micro moments of contact are that evidence. They don't feel like much, but they are quietly rewriting the story your body has been telling itself. The third step is about the difference between a wall and a door. There is a real difference between protecting yourself and sealing yourself away. A wall keeps everything out. A door can be opened and closed depending on what you need. Most people who cut everyone off built walls when what they needed was doors. Here is a simple technique. When someone asks something of you that you're not sure about, instead of saying yes automatically or disappearing completely, try saying, "Let me think about that and come back to you tomorrow." Just that. One day, it creates space without creating distance. It lets you make a choice from a calm place instead of a reactive one. And before you make the final decision to completely remove someone from your life, try a pause first. Tell yourself, I'm going to step back from this relationship for 1 week. Not forever, 1 week. At the end of that week, sit quietly and ask yourself how you actually feel. Not how you felt in the moment of whatever happened, but how you feel now. Often, in the calm after the storm, things look different. Relationships that felt impossible can start to feel worth trying. And sometimes, you realize the pause is enough. That you needed space, not absence. The fourth step is about learning a skill most of us were never taught. Saying no to someone you care about and watching the relationship survive it. This sounds simple, but for someone who has only ever known explosion or total withdrawal, it is revolutionary. Find one person in your life who feels genuinely safe. Maybe a sibling, maybe an old friend, someone you trust not to punish you for honesty. And practice saying something small. I'm really tired today. Can we reschedule? And then watch what happens. If they respond with warmth, something important happens in your body. You get evidence of something you may have never believed. That you can protect yourself in a relationship without destroying the relationship. That you can have needs and still be loved. That not every no is the end of something. That experience, small as it is, can change everything. The fifth step is the quietest one. Get a piece of paper and write a letter to the person or the experience that hurt you most. Don't plan it. Don't edit it. Just write everything you never said, everything you still carry, the anger, the grief, the things you wish had been different. Let all of it out onto the page where it can exist outside of you, and then do something ceremonial with it. Fold it and put it somewhere high and out of reach. Tear it slowly into pieces, or burn it carefully somewhere safe. This isn't about forgetting. It isn't about forgiving on demand. It is about saying to yourself, this pain happened. It was real. And I am choosing not to let it be the thing that runs my life anymore. You are not erasing it. You are filing it, moving it from the center of the room to somewhere you can access it, but don't have to live inside it every day. If you have watched this far, I want to say something to you directly. Cutting everyone off is never the real problem. It is the answer someone found to a problem that felt unsolvable. The pain was real. The exhaustion was real. The feeling that staying was slowly destroying them, that was real too. But answers that keep us alone are not really answers. They are just ways of surviving one kind of pain while creating another. If you are someone who is thinking about going silent, about deleting contacts, about starting over completely from zero, please pause. Just pause. Talk to someone first. Not necessarily everyone, not the people you're considering cutting off, but a counselor, a therapist, even a crisis line, someone outside the situation who can help you see it clearly. Because the decision to vanish feels like relief in the moment, but it deserves more than a moment. And if you are someone who has been left behind, if someone in your life went quiet and you never understood why, I want to offer you this. It probably wasn't about you. Not entirely. Most people who disappear are not disappearing from you specifically. They are disappearing from something inside themselves that became too heavy to carry, from a version of their life that stopped making sense. The leaving's almost never as personal as it feels. Look at them with gentleness if you can. They may be in more pain than you ever knew, and one day, when they have found a way back to themselves, they may find a way back to you too. And if they don't, if the silence remains, you are allowed to grieve that. You are allowed to miss them. And you are also allowed to keep your own door open, even if theirs stays shut. There is something quietly brave about remaining open in a world that keeps giving you reasons to close. Thank you for being here today. If something in this video touched you, please share it with someone who might need it. Like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.